While Les Teneyk takes off into the skies, he remembers how he became a pilot for a job where it's about more than just flying a helicopter, but saving lives.
I always had an interest in aviation, especially helicopters, and I started out right out of high school going into the military. Went to the Army's flight school and ended up with flying with the Minnesota National Guard.
Very first open field you see, big open field. On the right side there's a couple of buildings, that's where we're going.
Les explained to me the basic principles of flying a helicopter.
As I make inputs to the tail rotor, by increasing and decreasing what we call the anti-torque, we can turn left and right. As I move my flight controls, it'll change what we call pitch, and that's the angle the blade has. I'll use this to change the rotor disc. And so whether I go forwards, I go backward, left, right, or somewhere in between. And by pushing these pedals left and right, that's what's making my tail rotor change its pitch, which changes what we talked about earlier about the anti-torque. The green is the ground, obviously, the blue is the sky, and this is just kind of basically just a synthetic view of what's going on.
He says when it comes to flying a LifeLink helicopter, there's a lot to keep in mind for a successful flight.
Number one is safety. The aviation in and of itself, because of what we're doing and where we're going, can be inherently dangerous, but we mitigate those risks. We go through a risk assessment process where we reduce and eliminate as many risks as possible. So the very first thing is, can I safely do this flight? What comes to mind mostly is weather. We already know that we have the aircraft capable and the crew is well rested, otherwise we wouldn't be ready to take the flight. We'll also look at, in that visual assessment, any kind of barriers or obstructions. Most accidents, the vast majority, are on a roadway, or now it's maybe in the ditch of the roadway. It's roadway related.
When locating roads, they rely on their GPS and coordinates. While he focuses on the aviation, he also remembers the main mission, which is to safely transport the crew and the patient to the hospital and back.
It's just a real team atmosphere, and that's the one thing I always like to impress upon people, is that neither one of us are more important than the other. We're all needed for this job. Without one of us, it just doesn't work. You can't do it.
During their shift, flight paramedic Jeremiah Gleitz and flight nurse Twyla Bergenstall are always on call. They say that working as a team is necessary to follow their standard of being off the ground in 10 minutes from the time of a call and transporting patients safely to the hospital.
They say time is tissue, so the longer it takes for you to get to a facility, the more damage that is done to your heart or your brain, or your broken bone, the muscles surrounding it, the blood vessels if you're bleeding. So every minute really counts in a sick patient.
They say the important part of the job isn't necessarily the number of people they have saved.
It's not the number of lives we save, it's the number of lives we impact. Just because you may have lived either way, but you may now be living without a leg. Or you may have lived anyway, but now you're on a ventilator for life, or you can't use one part of your body because you went too long without having oxygen from a stroke. And then the families. Everybody appreciates what we do because we're doing everything we can to, help their family member or their friend in the worst day of their life. And most of us feel like, we've never done enough. There's always more people to help, more things to do, and more things to learn.
They say the most rewarding part of the job is seeing how their patients are doing.
To see follow-up. Generally we can request follow-up, or they'll give us follow-up from the hospitals on how these people actually did long-term. And it's neat to see some of these people that have made a complete turnaround and full recovery